This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday, the pod that fearlessly chats about all things affecting us ladies who are 40 plus fabulous.
Well, and the guys that want to know what we think.
Well, them too. I'm Janet Evans, advertising creative.
And I'm Jenny Woodhouse, semi-retired social worker.
In other words, you're busier than ever. We're J&J and we're super thrilled you're with us for She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Gorgeous. Well, have you ever been scammed?
Not that I'm aware of,
Right.
which is neither yes nor
yes.
no.
Oh.
Yes, probably. Yes, I have actually been scammed.
Really?
Yes, actually,
Okay.
I've just remembered. Yeah, someone ordered, I'm not going to tell you how because actually that might give people ideas. But yes, I have.
Oh, no. Did you lose, like, money? Or?
I lost $20,000, but
way.
because it was the bank's fault in the end,
Yes.
then they gave it back to me.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, how about you?
Well, again, I don't know, but like I'm absolutely so petrified of being scammed that I actually have probably deleted a lot of stuff that was actually genuine offers and, and real
Yes.
kind of things like,
You've
your
missed out.
PayPal account needs attention or something and it's like, no, that's a scam. But I guess, we tend to take people and what they say, like you tell me your name's Jenny Woodhouse.
I do.
And I think, well, it probably
must be.
is. It
I
probably
should
is.
know.
And
Yeah.
you're a lady and you wear glasses. And
Yes.
I take all that at face value. And I think that's probably what we tend to do, right?
Trust.
Because-
We
yeah,
trust.
Yeah.
Yes, that you're not fibbing to me. Yes.
Yeah, you don't approach everyone and everything that you do thinking,
With
just not
suspicion.
sure about that, And
Indeed, that's true.
so we all, I guess, want to be able to trust people. And our guest today did just that and eventually found herself out of pocket to the not very amusing tune of $317,000. Ouch! Tracy Hall, welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Gorgeous. Well, you are 40 plus fabulous and you weren't born yesterday. You're very smart and very fabulous. So how did this happen to you?
Well, I think you're right. No one thinks it's going to happen to them. And I was certainly one of those people as well. I've never thought this would be where I ended up in my early 40s. So I met a man online. I'd been divorced for about a year or separated from my husband for about a year. And I decided I wanted to start dating online. I was ready to meet somebody. I was working really hard. I was single parenting a 5-year-old. And I just felt like I wanted to meet somebody. And I wasn't looking for another husband or didn't want to be swept off my feet. Wasn't going to have any more children. I was in my early 40s. I guess I just wanted a companion, someone to spend some time with and connect with and just enjoy each other's company. So I decided to go online dating and I met a man by the name of Max Tavita in early 2016 and he was a Bondi surfer. He told me he was a chief investment officer for a family office and we started a relationship which went on for nearly 18 months. He lived in Bondi, I lived on the northern beaches, so it was very much an in real life, intimate relationship. We took family holidays together. We were planning our future together. I guess I felt like everything was heading in the right direction and I felt like I'd met my person. And throughout that time, he really presented himself as a finance expert and that was his line of work. And I overheard multiple conversations about that over the nearly 18 months. And it wasn't until July 2017, I woke up one morning to a Crime Stoppers video of an unidentified man being arrested outside of his Bondi Beach apartment. For swindling 15 victims out of $7.6 million. And even though his head was blurred out, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that that was my boyfriend, Max Tavita, apart from the fact it wasn't Max Tavita. It was a man by the name of Hamish MacLaren, and he happens to be one of Australia's most notorious conmen.
Oh my goodness.
So that's it in a nutshell.
Yes. Well, that's all we've got time for today.
Good night.
But shivers down the spine.
He must have, he obviously was very charming and very attractive. Were those the sort of things that drew you to him? What was the connection that you had?
Yeah, I think it started slowly. I think when you're in your early 40s, I had a child. had experienced a separation and divorce, so don't really rush into these things particularly quickly. And I was working really hard, so I didn't have a lot of time. So we built things slowly. He was an incredible conversationalist. He was a great listener. He asked incredible questions. And, seemingly we had the same values and morals. He was really funny. He was very charismatic, very kind of Australian. Like, we'd grown up in the same era of late 70s, early 80s in, beachside Australia. So we had a lot of the same cultural references, and we just sort of connected on those levels. And then from something that was really interesting to me was that we had similar interests. So we loved being by the beach. We loved surfing. We loved running. We loved beach holidays. So we were very connected on that space. And then, we both had corporate lives. And so he understood the corporate world that I had worked within for sort of 25 years. And I understood a little bit about what he was talking about. So on most levels, we were really connected.
Yeah.
He was just a really good kind of partner. He was very supportive.
Did you ever meet his family or his friends?
I met a few. So I met his brother-in-law over the time. I met a friend of his. I met his business partner, or the woman that he said he worked with. They were all fairly brief encounters. He was very good at keeping everyone pretty separate in retrospect.
Yeah.
And because we didn't spend that much time together, because I didn't have a lot of time to give, when we did spend it together, he wanted us just to be together, and I wanted that as well, because we were in the new phases of a relationship, getting to know each other. And if there was a suggestion that we'd have dinner with somebody, he'd say, but Trace, we haven't seen each other for a week and a half.
Okay.
I'd just really love to spend some time with you. And of course, that's music to your ears, right?
Exactly.
Like, he was playing on all of those things.
Oh, wow.
And, in the end, it just turned out that he was very good at mirroring.
Yes.
He was incredible at seeing what I needed or what I wanted or what I desired, and representing that back to me in the form of this fictitious character.
How did he get on with your little girl?
Well, they didn't spend much time together, to be honest. So the time that we did spend was when she was with her dad. We did take a few sort of family holidays. He met my mum and my brothers, and of course she was there. But on a week-to-week basis, the relationship that they had was really just on the phone. So he'd be on speaker and, he'd have a bit of banter with her. But really, I didn't mix those worlds. It was tricky, I had a big job. She's full on with her activities. He had a big corporate job. There just wasn't a lot of opportunity. So it really didn't, that side of it, thankfully, there wasn't really a deep relationship there. When he was arrested, it was 9 months later that she said to me, "Oh, we haven't heard from Max in a while."
Okay, that's
because I had made a decision not to tell her what happened,
Yes.
because it was so intense and it was so big, and she was so little. She was 6 at the time when he was arrested.
Yeah.
And so I made a decision, no tears at the dinner table. We would just get on with life, and she was not going to know what was happening.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was the right decision or not, but that is the decision I made. And 9 months later, she says to me, "Oh, we haven't heard from Max in a while."
What did you say?
I said, "No, darling, he's been really busy with work." And then she went on with whatever. I mean, kids don't care, right? And that to me showed that she had been protected, but also that they didn't have a relationship where she missed him not being in our world. That was a win in a lot of losses.
Phew, indeed.
Yeah.
So, Gorgeous, you never Googled him or anything like that? Because I always do that when I, meet someone like Jenny.
Oh, she
trust
Googled me.
her.
Yeah, straight away.
Beginning, but,
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I
right,
Googled
right.
I Googled a lot, and because we would have these dates and he would tell me things, and of course you want to have a little bit of a history or do a bit of research. The thing about Max Tavita was that Max Tavita did not have a digital footprint. So that is one thing that I say is a massive red flag if you are dating somebody. Not to have a digital footprint in this day and age is absolutely wild. Now, I just dismissed that because I did ask him, and he had an answer for everything, and they were very quick answers. They were very detailed. So it wasn't just, "Oh, I don't believe in social media." There was a very long-winded monologue that came with the fact that he wanted to remain under the radar. And, there was these very big conversations around simple questions. And you got all of that information. Then next time you asked a similar question, everything would match up.
Oh, wow.
And so it was just this constant confirmation of the information you'd been sort of drip fed over a period of 18 months that had you believe that it was actually the story that it was. So I did Google things. I'd ask him about it. I'd get the response. And, in retrospect, big red flag, no digital footprint. Yeah. If you Google Hamish MacLaren, even back then, there was a big digital footprint. There was a lot to be said about him from all of his misdemeanors over the previous 20 years. So had I known his real name and Googled him, I never would have gone on a date with him based on what I found on the internet. But of course, he had a completely fictitious name and no digital footprint.
Did he ever say he'd been married before?
He told me he was engaged. So he told me he was engaged. And this was another thing. There was always like, 2 lies and a truth, or 2 truths and a lie,
okay.
So there were bits of information that fed through that were actually true that I found out now. He was apparently engaged to a woman called Rebecca Beck. She had 3 sons. She lived in a certain region. He told me all of this information. Now, those things are true, except they were married, which I didn't know. So, things like that. And it's weird putting the pieces of the puzzle together in reverse because remembering what was said and then what is true and which parts of it are lies and how he expanded on those and lent into them. And, it's very, very confusing.
And I imagine because he was a chief financial officer or whatever he was posing to be, talks about money and even your money were, I guess, quite a natural thing for you guys.
We talked about money all the time.
Really?
Which is unusual because money's like the last taboo, right? Like people don't talk about money. Yeah. But because of his job and what he would express about his line of work and his skill set and the tools he was using, like there were Bloomberg monitors sitting in his lounge room, or in his dining room that he would tinker away and do trades on all the time. There were people that he would call that I would hear on the other end of the phone that were his back office, doing his trades, executing his trades, thinking about the strategy for the family office clients. There was a report that he wrote every week that went out to his family office clients that he would also then send to me to tell me about the markets. There was countless conversations, text messages, emails about the international markets, the state of politics and what that was going to do to the economy, Trump's antics overnight and what that was doing to the share market at close. Like he knew every time that each market opened and closed, and he was online and he was doing the trades and he was talking about it. It was like a movie that he'd created. And this was the world that we lived in. And so, of course, when it finally came time to talking about my money,
of course,
I thought he was the perfect person to invest in. He had set this world up over a period of almost a year to have me believe that he was exactly who he said he was.
Yeah, wow. So it took a year to kind of get to that point where kind of the rubber hit the road financially. And what was his proposition to you?
Well, there were a few different ones, but the majority of my money that I lost was my superannuation. So 22-year career of superannuation. And he essentially had convinced, guided and groomed me to set up a self-managed super fund because there were a lot of comments that came along the way that what are you paying in fees? Those fundies, they're thieves and, they take all your profits and blah, blah, blah. He was quite contrarian in his views. But of course, it was all to an end game. And so there was a lot of that. And then when it came to talking about my superannuation and we were building a future together and I thought he had my best interests at heart and I thought he loved me, he said, let me help you. I invest for some of the wealthiest families in Australia. I want you to be financially independent. You work so hard, Tracy, peppered with compliments. Yeah. You are the hardest working person I know. You deserve to be financially independent. We could do so much better with that money. I want you to be successful in this way. Let me help you. And again, I just thought everything that I'd heard, everything that I'd seen, and I thought we were building a future together. I thought, wow, someone wants to help me. Someone wants to take something off my plate.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm a marketing executive. If someone says to me, I'm running a small business, I need some help with marketing, I would offer my services. I would offer my point of view. I would, but I don't have ill intent, of course. So that's how he got it. And we set up this self-managed super fund. which was all done legitimately, because it's actually quite hard to move your super out of a fund into a self-managed super. You have to have the right documents. You have to have a constitution. You have to get a business account. You have to have it all signed off. You have to have all the paperwork. So he essentially groomed me through that process and did it all essentially for me, and I signed off on it. And then it came time to investing the superannuation money in a trading account. I got that check out from the bank, and unfortunately, this is the mistake I made. I made it out to Bell Potter Securities, which is the trading firm, where I believe there was an account in my name, in my super and in my self-managed super fund name, but the check was sort of open to Bell Potter Security, and what he did was he put that check into a washing account of his.
Oh,
it never went into my name.
Okay, so what you, in hindsight, should have done is taken the check out in your name?
Bell Potter Securities, Tracy Hall Investments, or whatever my superannuation self-managed super fund was called.
So he actually opened the account in your name?
I believed it was, but in the end, I don't think there was ever an account in my name.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. So I'd done all the paperwork, handed it over to him to do, and he told me he had all the logins and he was managing that account because that's how he could trade on my behalf.
Okay.
But that account never got opened, I don't believe. I think it went into a washing account of his. But to kind of add more colour to the story, he would provide me with reports from Bell Potter Securities on Bell Potter Security letterhead reports, which were pages and pages long. There were hundreds of trades. It started off with the money that went in, the trade, the ins, the outs, the price of the shares, all the things. And then at the end of the 6 pages, the profit that I'd made. And he would provide that report to me to show that the trades had been done and everything was legitimate. What I know now, because I work with a financial advisor now, is that all of those logins should have been in my name and I should have had access to those logins, which I did ask him for, but it was always sort of a future promise of that he would get those to me. So I never got those logins. So I've learnt a lot in the process.
Oh, yeah. And even those reports, were they, if someone forensically looked at those reports, were they legitimate, diagrams? Because I feel like, some financial advisors can really baffle you with that. It's kind of, here's a pie chart of that thing. And
it was more a ledger.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 6 pages of ledger, line after line of trade after trade after trade in terms of what he had invested in.
Would that be normal, though, for a self-managed super fund to be doing that much activity?
I think it depends what your investment strategy is.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I'd never done this before, so I didn't have nothing to compare it to. Yeah. I didn't know how all of those kind of permissions and things worked because when you have a financial advisor, they often have access to your accounts. They're under a very heavy regulated environment. So I hadn't done it before, so I guess I didn't know. And I believed he was a professional. I believed he loved me. I believed he had my best interests at heart, and he was guiding and grooming me through that.
And so when he was arrested, how many people did they say he had done this to?
Well, when he was arrested, I think it was on the basis of 3 people's complaints, but then with the Crime Stoppers video, more people came forward. So the day he was arrested, I still believed he was Max Tavita, my boyfriend of a year and a half. Yeah. And it wasn't until I saw that, called the detectives, and they told me it all unravelled for me. So I made a statement, so I became a victim, and there was another 15 people in total as part of the case that came forward after they saw this.
And was
press.
That concurrent, consecutive? Was it did he scam people one after another or at the same time?
It was all at the same. It was all over a period of about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
He was busy.
Yeah.
This was his job. This was his full-time job. He didn't have it. He didn't have a proper job. This was his job.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? I mean,
my goodness.
When you're not that kind of person yourself, it's like, how can you do that to someone?
Well, that's a question. You must ask yourself that question. How? What was in his head?
I mean, it's all about greed, right? This was his job. This is how he got money. This is how he got his self-worth. Everyone had sort of a different story. So I was the only one of all the victims that was in a relationship with him. Some other things were business decisions. So for some people, he was a barrister. For some people, he was a triathlete. For other people, he was a business strategist. So he had all of these different personas based on what that person needed at that particular time to get him under their skin, into their hearts and into their head. So he was very, very good at shape-shifting. He was like a chameleon.
Yeah,
It was crazy.
A dementor.
He wouldn't want to get mixed up, would he? Just,
Yeah, I know.
This is the thing, he didn't.
Confusing lifestyle.
Yeah, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
I know, right? Oh my goodness.
It's wild.
And did you get the money back?
No, as part of the case, the police and the criminal case, it was established that there was no money anywhere in Australia to be handed back.
So do you think it's offshore in some Cayman Islands?
Could be.
Kind of fun.
I mean, the only person that knows the answer to that question is Hamish. And
Don't they have to disclose all of that stuff? Like,
it's very hard to trace. You know, I think it's very easy to hide money. Right. You know, look at the situation of scams and fraud globally. Yeah. Like, it's very, very easy to hide money and, you know, transfer it into crypto and push it somewhere else. And I don't know. At the end of the day, there was no money left anywhere to hand back to victims, and Hamish was sent to prison. So.
Wow.
And were all the victims scammed about the same amount?
No, there were some people that were scammed of a lot. So there were people that were scammed of over $1 million.
Wow.
There was a retiree couple that lost a lot. It just broke my heart, their story. Going from what would have been a very comfortable retirement to not knowing how they were going to pay for their groceries every week.
Geez.
You know, just heartbreaking things. There was a couple, you know, their marriage didn't survive. And that's a 30-year investment in a relationship. Like that is worth more than $1 million. Do you know what I mean? And those stories just broke my heart so much because, yes, I'd lost my life savings. Yes, everything was taken from me. And I had my heart broken at the same time, but I was 42. You know, I knew I still had another 20-something years of work. I knew I could make that money back. I knew it was not going to be the retirement that I would have otherwise had, but I know I can work hard. I know that with the right mindset, I will make that money back. For them, they don't have that time. They don't have the luxury of time. And once a 30-year marriage is done, like it's done, right? And they were the stories that broke my heart.
How can you, as you think about him in your head, how do you understand who he is? Like, how do you understand what type of personality would do that?
Well, this was why the podcast that The Australian did, Who the Hell is Hamish, was so instrumental with my progress to healing. Because before that point, which was, I mean, he had been arrested for 2 years by the time the podcast came out. And in that 2 years, I really didn't have much information. The police were very tight-lipped. It was a criminal case. The financial institutions couldn't talk to me because it was wrapped up in the criminal case. His friends and family wouldn't talk to me. I did speak to Hamish a few times, got some letters from him, but you know, I couldn't trust anything he said. So for 2 years, I sat in this state of ambiguity, not actually knowing, because the last time I saw Hamish, we had been on a beautiful weekend in Byron Bay. We were looking at properties to buy together. I was so in love. I thought this was my future. And then that was all taken away in 24 hours. And I spent that 2 years going, who the fuck have I been spending? Like, you know, I had to go to the doctor and have an STD check. Like, it was so confronting. And then the podcast came out, and working with Greg Bearup, who was the journalist, it started to really put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together, because every time he'd find out a piece of information, he'd call me and he'd say, "You'll never guess, Trace, he's got a wife." And I'd be like, "Oh, does he? That's oh, yeah, okay." And nothing surprised me.
Yeah.
But as people came forward and he spoke to people and he found out information, he would feed that back to me. And what that actually allowed me to do was to figure out who the hell Hamish MacLaren was. And, you know, where I've got to 8 years later is that he has a personality disorder, a very serious one. I'd say he's sociopath, psychopath. He has no care or compassion for anybody else. He never thought about the impact that this would have on the people. So I have a very clear picture of who this man is now, that I have all the information and I have the truth. And I guess that's all you want in life, is to know what the truth is so you can put it together in your own head. Because without that, you're living in this state of ambiguity, and our brains don't like unfinished stories.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle to be able to put it to bed and to be at peace with it. And that's what the podcast did for me, meeting all the other victims and, you know, subsequently talking about it now and making sense of this and finding a purpose in my experience has really been one of the most, you know, a blessing out of the back of this, if you could call it that.
Yeah. Do you ever go back through the relationship and think, oh, at that point, I think he genuinely loved me. Like, he must have loved me at that point.
I have spent countless hours going through every memory, every look, every text message, every email, every glance, every handhold, everything to try and put this together in my own mind. And where I've got to with that is that I do believe that there are some emotions that can sit together concurrently. Two things can be true in some cases. So, for example, I know that you can feel grief and joy at the same time, and they're opposing. You can be grieving so hard, but also have moments of joy. I don't believe personally that love and deceit can exist in parallel. I don't think those two things can be true. So when I get asked that question, I think I have to say no. I have to say no. There was always an ulterior purpose to his behaviour. That's just the way I've had to come to terms with it.
Yeah, wow, that's so hard, isn't it?
Yeah. How did it leave you feeling about yourself?
I mean, I was very confused for a long time. I felt like I had been living in a parallel universe for nearly 18 months. Everything I knew to be true was not. And so coming out of that felt very discombobulating for me. The biggest impact, I think there are two things that have really impacted me, is my ability to trust myself. Because trusting other people is one thing, but when you don't trust your own self, your own judgment after being so incredibly betrayed, that is worse than not being able to trust other people. So that has taken a long time for me to build up and a long time for me to reconcile the decisions that I made entirely on my own. Yes, it was under deceit, but I made those decisions and they were the worst decisions of my life. They have forever impacted my life. And so being able to trust myself to make good decisions and trust my intuition and things like that, that's been really difficult. And, you know, the other thing that I found really hard was really coming to terms with and understanding shame. Shame is one of the most disgusting emotions I've found. It is so lonely. It's a really lonely emotion because it is that thing inside you that you want to bundle up and put away into a dark corner so that no one sees it, so that no one can judge you, so that nobody thinks worse of you. But more than that, it's so that you don't have to see those things in yourself. Like, I was lonely from myself because I didn't want to admit that this was something that had happened to me because I never thought it would be me.
Yeah.
And having to come to terms with the fact I'd made those poor decisions, I'd let this man into my life, it has forever changed the course of my life. I felt very ashamed of that. I felt very lonely from myself. I felt very disconnected from myself. So I've had to spend a lot of time pushing that back together and accepting what's happened. And part of talking about this so publicly has helped with that. But understanding shame at that intimate level has been really eye-opening for me. It's been I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot.
How long did it take you to get to the point of realising it was shame that you were feeling?
Oh, I'd say at least 5 or 6 years.
But what is it you were ashamed of? Because, I mean, isn't it ridiculous? Like, he was the deceiver. He did this to you, but you're the one who carries this, awful emotional
And
burden.
this is the thing with victims of scams and fraud. It's quite often there's this sort of subconscious victim blaming that happens. So even if you look at headlines...
Well, not even subconscious, actually. It's quite open, isn't it? She should have known better.
It reminds me not so long ago how the media handled victims of violent sexual crimes. She was out late at night, she was wearing this, she did this, she drank too much, whatever. And even headlines that have been written about me, there's one particular one that I use when I talk publicly about it, and it says something like, Tracy's dashing investor boyfriend all the red flags she missed.
Oh.
You know, and I don't think it's intentional. I really don't think there is ill intent. I just don't think it's been thought about in the way that we have had that conversation about violent sexual crimes. So part of what I try and educate on is let's talk about the perpetrator. Let's talk about him being the criminal who has taken money from people. So because that's why people feel ashamed, because, you know, there's a lot of questions I get like, you know, what were the red flags you missed? Again, as if he came in wielding a big red flag, you know.
Oh, no,
I just didn't see it, you know. And this is the thing about coercive financial control in this case.
Yeah.
It sneaks up on you. It doesn't come blaring through your door with a big red flag for you to look at. It's the subtlety and the coerciveness and the covertness of it that is like death by 1,000 cuts. And it's not until you bleed out that you realise what it is. But one at a time, you don't even, you know. So it's a really interesting conversation because over time I have come to terms with the fact that, yeah, I have nothing to be ashamed of. And this is why I talk so publicly about it now, because there are people that are still in the place that I was in that I want to encourage them to feel less shame and less embarrassment. You know, in Australia, 30% of all scams and frauds don't get reported.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness
that's right.
me.
That's the ACCC give us this number. I personally think it's higher.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of the reasons, there's many reasons, but, you know, there's career or reputational damage, there's reliving trauma, there's a whole bunch of very worthy reasons that people might not want to talk about it. But one of the big ones that people are embarrassed, they're ashamed. They're ashamed that it happened to them because we all think we're smarter than we are. We all think we're better than we are. When it comes to scams and fraud, the most intelligent thing we can do as humans is to humbly accept that it could happen to us. And that is going to protect you more than any other piece of education I could give you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about red flags before, and one of them in Max Hamish's case being the lack of cyber footprint.
Yes.
So if we are looking at someone through rose-tinted glasses, are there any red flags that we can also pick up?
Yeah, I think in the case of relationships, if you are not meeting friends and family pretty quickly, I would say that's something to be concerned about because other people can verify for you. They can verify a story. I mean, they could have verified his name in my case if I had have spent more time. And, you know, it just kind of gives a sense of legitimacy to the person. I think in the case of you introducing your partner to your friends and family, if you do have your rose-coloured glasses on, quite often your friends and family can see things that you can't, you know, especially when we're falling in love. And I think it's on the relationship to make sure it's strong and open enough to have those honest, brave conversations if you see things that person can't. So I would say meet friends and family very quickly. If somebody that you're in a relationship with is asking you for your data, so your license or your passport details, or for money, then that is a huge red flag. You know, it is not your job to give somebody else money to help them with the situation, especially if it's a fairly new relationship. Now, you would say after 18 months that you're in a solid relationship, which I thought I was in, but yeah, just be really careful around money and data and really question. And what I do say is trust but verify. So trust the person, but always verify. Do you know, ask those questions, be boldly curious, like go deep. You know, I did look online about a lot of the things that he said. He did present me with a lot of false documents, etc. But the reality was I was working a big job in the city. I was single parenting a 5-6-year-old. I was trying to have a relationship with this man. I had friends, I had family. I was tired. So I'd look, I couldn't find anything. And I just put my phone down on the bedside table and fall asleep. And then 6 o'clock came around the next day, everything had started again. And I just let it go. I didn't think hard enough about it.
Did any of your friends or your family ever say anything that were questioning him and his character?
I had a girlfriend, and I write about her in the book, my girlfriend Kath, who had her suspicions from the beginning. And yes, one morning she and I went for breakfast and she was visibly upset. Now, Kath is the only person that had asked the questions about him to a point where she knew that I was thinking about doing or, investing my superannuation through him. Nobody else had really got to that level. Of course, we don't talk about money. But Kath is incredibly curious and she knew what I was doing and she was really worried. And so she took me for breakfast. She was visibly upset and she held my hand and she said, Trace, I'm really worried. I'm really worried about you investing this money with Max. And of course, I just had my rose-coloured glasses on and I said, but Kath, you haven't even met him. You don't know him. Wait, we'll go out for dinner. You'll see. He's the most solid human I've ever met. You'll see. And that's where that conversation ended. We did end up going out for dinner, but in the background, she was sort of building a bit of a file, knowing that she had to give me something solid. It wasn't just her opinion that was going to, change my mind about him. The reality was she was scared about our friendship as well.
Yeah.
Because we'd been friends for 17, 18 years and she knew how happy I was and she didn't want to be right. Yeah. She wanted to be wrong, but she just, her spidey senses were going off and she was sort of, she was side of stage. She was the one that could see what was going on. And she didn't know for sure, but she had these senses and she was, writing away to universities in America that he said he'd been to see if she could get the enrollment, when he was there. And she was doing she should be a private investigator, actually.
Her name is Kath, private investigator. Get a number.
Right. But also what I've learned through all my research post and hearing so many other stories, there's actually a psychological phenomena, I guess, and it's called betrayal blindness. And it's the sense that if you are about to be betrayed or scammed or deceived, if you are told as the victim, there's some huge proportion, it's like 80% of people would still go ahead with the relationship, would still go ahead with the transaction because they have so much, they're under a spell. And the banks tell me this too, that constantly the banks are telling me the amount of people we call up and say, we believe this to be a fraudulent transaction. We do not want you, we do not recommend you send this money. It will go to a scammer. The amount of people that do it anyway. And in Australia, the regulation is if a customer instructs a payment to happen, they have to do it. So there is this psychological issue that people have that when they are under the spell of somebody, the betrayal blindness is a real thing and they will still go ahead with the transaction or with the relationship or whatever it might be. So it's a really interesting thing to think about.
Have you got any advice for people who might go, I might recognise that in myself?
Yeah.
If a friend or a family member says, excuse me, but I'm worried about it, and you're dismissing that, any advice for someone who might just dismiss it?
I would say it's a very difficult conversation for a loved one to have with you. So if they are having it, they've obviously got big concerns. So I would take the concerns seriously. And again, I would say trust but verify. So do some more background research, look into it further, do it with the person that's concerned about you because sometimes they see things that you can't.
That's a good idea.
I would say, and if you are the person that suspects, it is no good going in there and saying this person's a scammer or this person's a fraudster. This is a catfish, because that's a very accusational thing. And what you have to remember is that this relationship that someone has been built over a long period of time. So it might take them a long period of time to see the truth for what it is. But if you can sit with them and say, look, I'm just a bit concerned. Can we do a bit of research together? Or this is something I read, or I heard this person on a podcast. I'm a bit worried. Can we look into it together a bit further? And really do it in that soft, gentle way, not beating around the bush, actually saying what you're worried about. But, it's that trust but verify. Keep doing your research, look into it further, make some phone calls together, gather some more information. They're the things that you can do as opposed to go, scammer, watch out.
Yeah.
Because then it happens and then you feel stupid as well because you're like, oh, they told me, told you so kind of thing.
Well, they could be wrong.
They could be. I just don't think people are brave enough to have that conversation unless they're really certain.
It's really interesting, like the long game.
The long
and
con.
that's why he had so many different things on the boil, is because they're not all going to come to fruition at once. So you've got to invest that time into that person and
that's right.
that fraud.
Yeah.
And so Hamish gets parole. next year?
Yeah,
perhaps?
July next year, he'll be up for parole.
Wow. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not thrilled about the idea of him being out in the world again.
Yes.
But the reality is you can't keep people in jail forever. And there is going to have to be some sort of assimilation back into society. And, you know, yes, that does worry me because of his long-standing history of this type of behaviour and how much he has stolen from people all over the world. But at the end of the day, the only person that can control that is Hamish. You know, I can't control that. What I can do is build my life back up and, you know, focus on my own self and my daughter and my career and what I'm doing in my life. And hopefully part of that is educating people about these types of situations, because I had never heard a story like this. I had only heard those clickbaity, sensationalized stories that are run by, you know, news programs that, you know, have you believe that the person that gets scammed is a lonely middle-aged woman looking for love on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, and I just couldn't relate to those. I'd roll my eyes and think that would never be me. That would never happen to me. I'd never be that stupid. And yet here I
Devastating,
am.
isn't
I
it?
lost my life savings to a man I met on the internet that pretended to love me. So it's exactly the same. You know, I'd like to hope there's been some rehabilitation. But again, that's not something I can control.
Do you think he'll try and find you, for example?
I don't know. I don't believe so. I don't
That's
think.
reassuring. And gorgeous, so you've called your book The Last Victim.
Yep.
And I imagine that title has come because you were literally the last victim before he got arrested, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And you very generously agreed to give 2 of your books away today to listeners of She Wasn't Born Yesterday, which is fantastic. And not only that, but they're going to be signed personally by you. But gorgeous, just one last question. If someone we know is scammed, how can we kind of support them? What's the best way?
I would say a lot of compassion because people are going to be feeling that shame, that embarrassment, that disgust in themselves that they've got themselves into that position. One of the things I do say is you are a victim of crime. You know, scams and fraud, they are crimes. They are financial crimes. And when you position it like that, for me, in my brain, when I got my head around the fact that I was a victim of crime, it helped me come to terms with the whole situation a bit better. Because if you are a victim of a violent crime, there is a process you go through. There is, you know, support for you. There is a pathway. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet with victims of financial crime in this country. We will get there. You know, so that support and saying you are a victim of crime, this is not your fault. You have been fooled. You have been deceived. And we will do everything we can to support you. And in most cases, people who lose money to scams and fraud in Australia, they don't get their money back. It's a difficult process. Fraud is very difficult to prosecute. It's not always about the money. You know, it's about the emotional impact and the psychological impact that these things have. So that's where we need more support. That's where we need to encourage people to see professionals if it has been a deep betrayal. As a support person, just constantly reassuring, loads of compassion, and you are a victim of crime. This is not your fault.
And are you ever going to forget Max DeVita / Hamish MacLaren?
There has not been a day in almost the last 8 years where I have not thought about what happened, the situation, him. No, this is a part of my story. This is a part of the tapestry of my life now. And I like to hope that I will get to a place one day where it's not on my mind all the time. But I've learnt so much from it. And what I'm hoping to do is use that energy and those learnings and those lessons to help other people. And if that means talking about it all day, every day, then I'm prepared to do that.
We're just so grateful that you've taken the time to talk to us about it and our listeners. It's just been incredible and very reassuring to know it can actually happen to anyone. Tracy Hall, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your company. What did you think of this episode?
Well, tell us everything, Gorgi, with a cheeky review on Apple Pods. We'd love to know what you reckon about our topics and our guests. And us.
And we look forward to your company next time on She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
1032. Thanks for listening.